Hello.
Hey, everybody, and hi, Naomi.
Hi.
I just thought we should dive right in.
Yeah.
So let's start where every good story starts, with your mom. How is your mother tied to your story of being an entrepreneur?
Sort of in an inadvertent way. My mother is no doubt a powerful force in my life, always has been. And I have so much admiration for her. But in this case, I was about 36 and just at the point where I wanted to start a family. And I hadn't been able to get pregnant. An older friend of mine suggested that I go to a doctor and take some blood work. And I was like, what do you mean? Why? And but I did what she said. I went to my gynecologist, and he told me that the results suggested I was close to menopause. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, you may want to look into a donor egg. And it was all very shocking to me, but I did remember in the very background of my mind that my mother had mentioned that she had gone into early menopause. So anyway, I sort of left that meeting, that appointment, and in shock, panicked, and called my mother right away and said, why didn't you tell me about menopause? Like, give me more information. What happened? And she said, well, yeah, I had my last period when I was 45. And
you were 36 at the
time. And I was 36. I was like, and I thought I was ahead of the game. Many people in my industry weren't having babies until their mid to late 40s. So I asked her, why didn't you tell me? And she said, well, these were the conversations I didn't have with my mother because she never had them with hers. And that just struck me. That was like, oh my God, this has been a code of silence that everyone's apparently agreed upon and passed it from generation to generation. So I was completely thrust into this panic. Long story short, I was able to get pregnant naturally with a lot of interventions, but I quickly went into hardcore symptoms after I had my second baby, and that was sort of in my early 40s. And again, I was panicked, and the same kind of fear all took place, and there was nowhere to go. There was no one to speak to. There was nothing to read, really. There was definitely the internet was just sort of getting started. I didn't know how to operate it. So there weren't chat rooms, and it just struck me that it was a lonely, terrifying time, and I needed help. I needed information, and I also was sort of feeling the panic of my industry, the doors would be closed surely on me if I was, I had no longer any functioning eggs. So
they asked that in casting rooms?
It's definitely not that direct of a question, but I started quite late in Hollywood terms. I really just got started in my early 30s, and they said to me, well, you need to, stay on it, get motivated, because it's all over when you're 40.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that most of us here and most people in general assume that, celebrities, it's easy for them to start businesses, that people come to you with offers, particularly in the form of an endorsement deal. But Stripes is quite a different case, and it seems like it's really a passion project for you. So how did you even know where to begin when you knew that you wanted to start this business?
Well, as I said, going back to in my early 40s where I felt very alone, I was testing the waters with friends, like, is there anyone out there cracking jokes? Sort of, I was met with nervous laughter. It was clear to me that no one was up for the discussion or there themselves. So I was really trying to navigate it with, a degree of shame and loneliness. And I thought then, well, there should be some kind of book. There should be something that women can, read and have a little bit of a laugh as well, because this isn't the end as far as I'm concerned. And I was very early. I had plenty of energy, and I hate that there's this message being given. If the doctors aren't educated on how to help, and your friends aren't in a huge, they aren't up for the discussion in a huge way, or sharing it at all, then at least there has to be a book in some way, and the message that no information is available makes you feel like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You may have to just suck it up and cope. And also, it's probably over for you. You should just go to the corner and pull out your knitting
So you had a good
needles.
10 years, then it was all done.
Yeah. But I had too much fear to, sit down and start writing a book. And I'm not really a writer. So I just sort of sat on that idea and got some help. Mercifully, my doctor was ahead of the game and prescribed me some solid meds. And the hardcore symptoms mainly were manageable because of that. But in terms
So how does personal experience like this translate into a business though? Because I think some of us think, aha, we have this idea.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even know where to begin to transform it. I would just tell my one friend and be like, oh, isn't this a great, startup idea?
Yeah, I think in today's world, there's such a huge volume of businesses and products, and everything's available, everything's been done, everything's been thought of. I don't think something can exist without a story behind it that you're connected to. Yeah. And that was something I felt deeply connected to. It's a very personal story. I knew this experience took place for me, and I was pretty darn sure I was not unique. Half the population will be going through menopause at some point.
And someone was saying to me tonight, it's the oldest new problem there is.
Exactly. And we're living so much longer. So why wouldn't we want to set ourselves up better? Really, it's bizarre to me that this conversation, this piece of the story in terms of one's hormonal cycle, was just left out. In fact, I can think of conversations that I had with my children. Because they'd heard me on 90,000 Zooms mentioning the word menopause 60,000 times at every meeting. And I said to them, do you know what menopause is? And my son said, well, isn't that when old ladies die? And I was like, I'm in menopause.
Yeah.
And he went, thinking I was going to probably drop dead on the spot. But they went through sex ed. They got the story. They knew, hormones start now. The first part. And then, all the way through pregnancy and, all the things that you can come up against. But that piece was left out. It's just mind-boggling.
And so when you what was the sort of vision you had, and how did you pitch it? Because it wasn't something where Menopause called you and said, hey, we'd love you to be our new face.
No, it wasn't. And and if you asked me, what my dream was about, if I ever wanted to create a business, it wouldn't have been this, but when I was a kid. But because it affected me in such a deep way, I felt it was necessary. And really just to open up the conversation, to get rid of stigma and shame, build awareness. It was really clear to me that the business was not just about a product line. It was about bringing a community together, as well as keeping up to date with the current education, and it's ever evolving. I mean, every day you read the papers now, and there's a new fantastic article, which is just not the case how it was, 10 years ago. So a woman can be prepared. She can be ahead of it. This is a conversation that a 35-year-old should be listening to and being, willing to dive into, because if I had have been better prepared, I think it would have been so much easier. And I think when I say we, me and the other people who are going through it, possibly in this room, I will be the last generation where it's a taboo conversation, and I'm happy about that.
And so Stripes essentially has a three-pronged approach, if I
Yeah.
understand correctly. It's a whole product line, and you have a
Yes.
great tagline for it.
Yeah.
And it's
Scalp to vag.
Yes, there you go.
Sorry.
I thought she would deliver it better than me.
From here to here.
So it's the product line is the one-stop shop, and then also there's sort of a community forum, and then medical expertise.
Yeah.
And then, so tell us about the name Stripes. How did you come up with that? And it's not the Bill Murray movie, if you're Googling.
Oh, Bill. So Stripes, yeah, I was having a conversation about it with some friends, and as many of you may know, coming up with a name is the hardest thing. It's hard to name your children. It's hard to name anything. But I was talking about the mindset of a woman at this stage in her life, and how she should feel. And it was clear to me that she had been underserved and unreflected in media and storytelling, which felt so wrong. We should feel proud of our cumulative experiences, and we should feel, given that we've had successes and failures and humiliations and, exciting times as well, we should feel proud. And we should feel wise. And I certainly, as a young woman, was always looking up to older women for their wisdom. So to me, it was like she's been through the battlefield and she's earned her stripes. And then I just went, oh, stripes, that's it. And it was a moment, and and not everyone gets it right away, but I think, to me, it's that. It's also, it was clear to me that visually it was going to be an attractive thing, as well as one stripe can't live alone. Yeah. We are a community that relies upon each other.
And just to go back, when you say visually, you mean basically that these aren't, the products have sort of a look to them that
yes,
is, yeah.
And the whole brand, I happen to love stripes, and colors. I wanted it to look bold. I wanted the names of each product to have, a little bit of a laugh, people to have a laugh. We've had enough tears by this point. Let's just have a laugh, and, a nod to some humor. And humor is definitely the way to move through painful experiences. And
so wait, what's one of the honey?
Well, there's a vaginal moisturizer called Vag of Honor, because we should honor the vag. And, we have a hair mask that's called the Crown Pleaser. So playing on words, playing on phrases, and really some hero ingredients that really address hydration issues, because, it wasn't like I just had one product in mind. It was to try and create a line that deals with one of the biggest symptoms. I mean, I didn't even realize that, as I went into this idea, as I called Naomis and pitched the idea, but as I was preparing for that call, it became clear to me that women can go through 34 or more symptoms. And how do we address that many symptoms?
34.
34. And growing, as the more research that's put into this. But the main one is hydration. So that was the main reason for us to...
And we can't just solve it by drinking lots of water.
Please drink lots of water, always. But yes, there are some smarter ingredients that really deal with certain things going on in different regions.
Amyris says all the regions.
All regions.
And Amyris is the biotech company that you cold called, which is so amazing that you did that. So when you were preparing to sort of come out with this, hidden secret, I suppose. Were you worried, because aging, I think, is a tough topic for anybody, and especially anyone on screen. But do you think that the discussion around menopause at that time was even more difficult? Were you afraid that this would impact your first career, as a leading lady, and that you would all of a sudden only get mom roles?
Well, I kind of already was only getting mom roles. But yes, of course, it was a huge factor that I had to get beyond the fear. Because you can't sort of half go there.
Yeah.
It's either all in or not at all.
Perimenopause?
Yes, but we are it's
not
for
really there yet.
perimenopause, but
Yeah.
no, there's no. I mean, that's the thing, is I was done with the secret holding. It's like, forget this charade, like trying to look younger, and and I was bored of looking at brands that were promising the world, and that's actually not even a world that I want to aim towards anymore anyway. I'd rather have a brand speak to me directly and meet me where I'm at and say, your skin can look brighter and more dewy, but don't put a 25-year-old on the bottle or the ad campaign. So yeah, I was looking for that authenticity. But in terms of getting beyond my fear, risk benefit, I certainly went through a lot of that. And ultimately, I felt like I want to do something that is helpful. And I know how I felt at that time. And if I had somewhere to go and, not have to sneak around in different shops, weird shops, for certain products, I felt like
what shops, Naomi? I don't know.
I wanted, to make that experience inclusive and, more bearable, easier. In terms of how it would land in my industry, I was definitely afraid, but in a way I believed Hollywood gets a bad rap, right? They're always accused because they're the sort of central focus oftentimes with when things are going wrong, but they're usually going wrong in every industry all over. But they're very good at looking at the problem and trying to solve it. A lot of things need more work, but they're quite good at addressing it quickly. And ageism is happening, and they're really looking at that now. And I do think we're already shifting towards a better place. And hopefully doing this and talking menopause ad nauseum is going to, really get this going. I'd like to buy myself more time.
Say it 3 times quickly, menopause.
Menopause, 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 menopause. And I'm sure there's a lot of men in this room, and I really don't think I've had or spoken in a live way on a panel or any conversation with so many men in the room. So I hope this isn't awkward for you. But I'm not going to apologize, because I feel like there's an opportunity for you to, and I'm not going to lecture either, but to be more compassionate. I think everyone needs to be brought in on this conversation. I can speak about it from my own personal point of view of how I had to launch the conversation, embrace it with my own partner, and not for lack of, trying to hide it. I really didn't feel good about sharing it with him. In fact, I can go into detail.
Why not? This is only a couple hundred of your closest friends.
Yeah, exactly. It's just between us.
It's a good time.
But yeah, I started a new relationship, and I was wearing the patch, which is what you take for, when your estrogen levels are very low. And it's like a Band-Aid of sorts, that the medicine, your body absorbs it transdermally, and but it's not like a Band-Aid in that you can just rip it off. And even when you rip off a Band-Aid, it can leave a mark. But this leaves a really solid mark because it's got lots of adhesive, and so I would have to sort of disappear to the bathroom and scratch very hard to take it off.
Right back.
Yeah, I'll be right back. And leave myself with very irritated skin. So eventually I had to come clean and say, Billy would say, I probably shouldn't say.
It's okay, it's a small room. It's a small room.
He would say, is everything okay? And I would say, well, look, okay, this is what's going on. And the minute the truth was on the table, he was like, okay, tell me what I can do. How can I help? And it was just a beautiful exchange, and kind of a great moment for us, because it was early enough on that it made me think, wow, you're a great man. Yeah. You're a good person. It was sort of a litmus test.
I was curious, because many people, we all sort of struggle to find a work-life balance, but in your case, you actually have a work-life balance because you have two separate careers. So how do each kind of inform the other? Or how do you make choices? How do you balance that sort of all those spinning plates?
Yeah, it's a lot of spinning plates, and there are days where I feel like I've got it under control, and other days where I'm like, I can't handle this. But luckily, as an actor and being self-employed, I am, and I had a long enough career now that I'm able to, fortunately make some choices, and so I can say I'm going to take 6 months off. And now this time is very much filled. Like I've just finished a really long, intensive work period on a show, and finished it about a month ago. And now I'm very focused.
And that show is
it's called Feud.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and it's about Capote, Truman Capote and his women, the Swans, which I'm sure some of you New Yorkers would know about, a bygone era. Yeah.
So were you taking calls in your trailer kind of thing? Like
for
after
sure.
the long, yeah.
For sure. I mean, I did kind of try to switch off. I do try and act with discipline when I'm in my work head. It's hard to shift brains. But then, sometimes at lunch hour, I'll take a meeting or a call.
Would you do that in character?
I'm definitely in costume and my wig, but no, I'll drop the voice and take the teeth out. Which
it could add some authority.
Yes, definitely. I should have thought of that.
So we're going to have time for questions in a moment. So get ready if you have any. But I was also curious, now that you are in a new sort of entrepreneurial role, how do you measure success? Because there's no real Oscars for business. So what do you look to?
I've had, I don't know, I've had a couple of great moments where women have come up to me on the streets and have, almost with tears in their eyes said, thank you. I was able to finally have this conversation with my husband or my children.
You're like, do you know about the patch? This is how you take it off.
And when they're approaching me, I'm sure they're coming towards me to speak about I saw you in this or that, but then they end up launching into the menopause conversation, and that feels very meaningful to me. That feels like, if I've affected, one person, that's great. I feel really good about that. That feels.
Did the one person buy the whole line? Are you watching your?
I don't know. I'm not watching that. I'm not asking. I'm quizzing them. But I hope that they're finding joy in not just the product, but yes, the community. We have 2 places online as well on the website to go to. We have, Meno Labs, which is all about expert information, the education that we keep as current as possible, but also a magazine called Adulted, which is multiple articles about, this time and how the change can affect all parts of your life. And then there's ways for women to come and share their stories in real time with others and chat together as well.
Great. Do we have any questions? I think we have mics coming around.
Hi there.
Hi.
It is great to see and meet you. I hope you don't mind. I have a ton of respect for what you're talking about, but I'm a film history professor at a college. And I can't picture going back to my students and saying, I got to address the great Naomi Watts, and I asked her about. So I have a film question for you.
You can't even say the word.
You can practice here with us.
Did you find it fun to dance for King Kong? And more seriously, what was it like? What's your perspective on standing in for Fay Wray in what's an iconic film history movie?
Right. I loved working on King Kong, and all of the physicality was so much a part of it. And, it was really difficult as well, working with, green screen constantly. That said, the wonderful Andy Serkis was there for me always to connect with, like a soul, a pair of eyes, and someone emoting. So it really was an incredible experience, really a whole in every way. I got to meet Fay Ray, and it was a wonderful experience. We, Peter Jackson, his wife, and their writing partner, we all went to her manager's apartment here in the city before we started filming, and we chatted about King Kong, and she gave me her blessing. It was a very special evening. Peter Jackson had tears in his eyes, but yeah, difficult shoes to step into.
Thank you for that. We have a couple over here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for bringing light to this topic. I'm Mirko Radak, and I was wondering, there's always a partner or a man on women's side at that point, and it's not hard. So it's not easy, sorry. Can you tell us something what we can do more or sit together? Because sometimes we don't, and you have much more experience talking about this and researching, what we can do more together, because sometimes we don't understand what's going on, and it's the biochemistry, right?
I love you for asking that question. And
I know it's not easy, but it's good to have people like you, from other industries who are bringing this, you have more reach than others.
yeah.
So what can we do, or what can you do now more? One thing is helping with the products, but let's talk about us also. What
Yes.
can we do, or
I think
that
do
relationship?
what you're doing now. Lead with curiosity and empathy. Those are going to get you so far in every conversation, but particularly with this one. And yeah, just asking questions. How can I help? What can I do? And I think once the mystery is gone, everyone knows how to behave. And the more it's spoken about, I think the easier it becomes. And I think we can feel good about the fact that the next generation is not going to have this as an uncomfortable conversation. The doors have broken open. We cracked them a little bit, and every woman seems to be responding well and wanting to get shouty and loud. And eventually this will just be a regular conversation, like it is about periods and fertility and all of those things that we moved through. So thank you for asking that question. I really appreciate that you stood up.
Can
And
you do something
he
like
can
in
go
the
to
future?
stripes.com probably.
Yes,
right?
go to stripes.com. Yeah.
I think we have time for one last question over here. Sorry.
All men tonight.
Yeah, there you go. Free focus group.
It's
Here you
amazing.
go.
I'd love to hear you talking about menopause in public.
It has already men in it.
So there's a woman, Dina Radenkovic, who's running a biotech company in New York called Gamito. You may have heard of it, and it's working to alleviate or prevent menopause symptoms. And I'm wondering how you feel about the idea of biotech working on menopause, and is there a tension between the idea of pathologizing it as a biochemical process and thereby saying, well, there's something wrong with this, versus just saying, oh, this is something that happens and it's just the third stage of life, and why are we trying to treat it?
Well, I also think you're highlighting something quite interesting, which is that a lot of companies are coming into this space. So it's good to talk about what sort of differentiates what you're doing versus the sort of more biotech.
Yeah, well,
angle,
we're working with Amyris, which is
Yeah.
also a biotech company. We're really at the beginning of researching this. We've tapped into an audience. We're listening to what their needs are. We're growing as we speak. The sky is the limit. I feel like right now we're dealing with, these symptoms of hydration issues. And who knows where we'll go from here. We have doctors on our board, and we're in contact with multiple other doctors. So we'll see where we go. I am not a scientist or a doctor. I've played many of them. But since I don't have a script or the right clothes, I'm going to leave that to them. But I think this is, we're at the beginning of some great research taking place and some great, exciting changes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and
you.
thanks to all of you for being such a wonderful audience.